The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
So video games.
Yes.
So video games.
So I hear that it's like a normal game, like a board game, but played via video electronic device.
Ooh. So, okay. Your kids, I think, watch a little bit more TV than my kids do. When you talk about that thing, like, finish this sentence. Like, yes, you can go into the other room and watch
TV?
I don't know what happened if I was replaced with like a doppelganger from the 1950s. But I started saying television like almost exclusively. Like I said TV earlier, right? Like I do still occasionally say it, but if I'm referring to the television, like it's an appliance, like, you know, take your glass of water off the television, right? Or like, you know, Father, can we watch some TV? You may go watch some television, right? Like, I don't know why. I'm old.
Yeah, no, that's not one that I particularly have. Yeah, I do TV. I also, much to the chagrin of my wife, but my kids are fine with it. Is I use controller and remote interchangeably. You know,
those are not the same word. George,
they're not. It's a remote controller.
No.
Yes, it is. It is in all cases.
It is, except now you have a bunch of things laying around your living room that are controllers, as in for the PlayStation.
Right, as opposed to the controller
for the television. Yes.
It controls the TV.
So I'm with you on this because I did used to use them interchangeably, and then probably around the time video game controllers became fully wireless, I bet that's where the Switch subconsciously started, because there's the remote, which is for the television, and there's the controller, which is for the console.
Yeah, no, and the worst thing too is that a lot of times because I will typically say the TV remote is the remote and the video game controller is the controller, right? But I will, when I screw it up, it's because I'm normally fried or frazzled or something like that, and I'm not wrong. But the thing is that my cerebrum has shut down and has offloaded a lot of the heavy lifting to my cerebellum. And so I will be saying, where's the remote? But I'll be pantomiming the thing that I want, so that helps a little bit. It does some of the lifting, right? Because it'll be like, where's the controller? And that's one hand, my left hand, and thumb going up and down. That's controller. That's TV remote, right? And then, where's the controller? Both hands up, and and you do the buttons faster with your thumbs, you know? Yeah.
So, okay, I have questions. First, would you ever intentionally call your PS5 controller a remote?
Not, I wouldn't go out of my way to do it, but like I have done it casually many times.
Yeah, but you wouldn't ever say like that is the proper term for it, right? Like,
no,
you might expect someone to know what you meant,
right? I would expect somebody to know what I mean, especially if I'm pantomiming at the same time. But I would never have the stones to correct somebody, like if they're like, "Hey, where's the video game controller?" I'm like, "Oh, you mean the video game remote?" Like I don't have that plinth to stand on.
Yeah, you don't. I do think the fact that you pantomime it like you're holding a PlayStation controller, right? So like hands near each other, holding, the grips, thumbs on, the sticks or the buttons or whatever. Like, I agree with you. That is the universal sign language for video game remote controller. But I wonder, will that have the staying power of like the floppy disk, right? As the save icon, or the phone like hand set as the phone icon? Because if all you ever play are like Wii games and Switch games and like the MetaQuest VR games, this like thumbs on the thumbsticks, like that is not what a controller is like for you, right? A controller is like waving your hands around like an ass.
I mean, it may eventually get to that point, but here's what I would like for our listeners to do on the Discord or what have you is go ahead and just send us gifs of what it looks like when you pantomime a controller, and then we'll get a good sample population, because I'm pretty sure that 90% of people are going to do what they can't see us doing, but is this.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I would be shocked if anyone listens to two old guys talk about old video games and that's not their gesture. Like if their gesture is swinging a Wiimote side to side, I'm going to have follow-up questions.
Yeah. Or like, do you play video games and it's like one index finger going up and down? It's like, what's that? It's clicking the mouse. It's like, get out of here. Stop it.
Yeah. Mouse and keyboard looks very strange. You just look like you have carpal tunnel in one hand.
Which is also another like small affordance. And then I swear we'll probably talk about video games.
No, this actually, there will be a segue for this. We will get there.
Is that there is a difference between like when somebody says like, oh, do you play video games? Right? Like that's kind of a broad term. But like I actually make a difference between like I'm going to go play video games, I'm going to go play computer games. And I think that's an age thing from back when those were fairly separate, Yeah. But yeah, computer games and video games, there's two different words for that,
Okay, so I'm gonna give you an opportunity to pull back the curtain of us recording the show. Did you look at the mailbag question for this week?
I did. But
Okay.
I've forgotten what it is already. What was it again?
It's about the difference between console games, PC games, and mobile games.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
this will actually, there'll be a nice thing there. But first, a message from these sponsors, which is you. Give us your stuff. Should we got a show, right? We can't just go straight into mailbag. That would be, people wouldn't know what was going on.
We would be animals.
Yeah, if you're into this one and only one good opening monologue that is going to segue into the rest of the episode, you can subscribe to the show. You can leave us a rating and review. You can make a recommendation. Go find a game review episode or an episode of Nostalgia Goggles you really like and send that link directly to someone, because that's better than reviews to strangers. If you want to go crazy and support us on Patreon, you can get the after show. Everybody gets the after show no matter what amount they support at. I think they go down to the ridiculously named free tier now, which replaces following. Like you could follow somebody's Patreon account and now they got rid of followers. So we actually have a few free supporters who follow us to like keep track of what we're doing, which is totally fine. They don't get the after show. You got to give us $1 to get the after show.
Yeah.
And if you go really above and beyond, we will shout your name out on the show. So I first need to thank our 4-bit portables, David, Jacob, Joshua, Keith, and Martin, our 8-bit classics, Yarno, Jay Brent, John, and Kevin, and our 16-bit hero, Michael.
And for $1,000, we will do a 1-hour podcast with a subject of your choice.
Oh, no.
Yeah, whatever you want. We'll just talk about it for an hour.
Can we say it has to be like legal? Like nobody can make us talk for an hour about something that will like get us charged federally.
Well, I mean, I think that we get to determine what we talk about with it, So if it's just like talk about robbing banks, it's like, okay, we're not going to plan a bank robbery, but we can talk about robbing banks.
Yeah.
The ins, the outs, the ups, the downs.
Yeah, let's not talk anymore about all the loopholes that someone would have to account for in the way they made their monkey's paw wish.
Oh man, that is absolutely one of my favorite things to do in D&D, man, is the monkey's paw stuff.
Dude, there have been times we were what do you call it? Gaming, table topping. We were playing D&D.
Table topping feels like it has other connotations.
It way does, yeah, big time. But there have been times where we were playing D&D where I would have said, that's the only reason you're there. The only reason you're there was to put your players in situations where they could ask for something, and then you could, big scare quotes, give it to them. Yep.
Yeah, no, because one of the mantras of a DM is like, give the players whatever they want, make them not want it by the time you give it to them. Like, I don't want this anymore. No, shh, buddy, you asked for this, you wanted it, it's yours now.
You would have been right at home in AD&D, man. Like there was a lot more player death in AD&D, and it was a lot harder to like bounce back from.
Oh yeah, no, and actually I was talking to this is semi-related, but I was talking to somebody about D&D stuff, and they were like, you think about this a lot, don't you? I'm like, a lot of my recreation is spent making D&D stuff, but they were like, yeah, the problem was that you so I'm a player in this person's adventure, and he was like, yeah, the problem is that you guys are just stomping all over everything. I need to make everything more powerful. I'm like, no, you've got a different problem. And I thought this was fascinating, which was that he was doing like a hex crawl, right? And so, but each hex was a day, right? And so sometimes we'd run into stuff, sometimes we wouldn't. I was like, yeah, the problem that you're running into is that we are getting long rests way too often. So there is no reason for us not to go into combat and blow everything, and then, yeah, we're going to, but, we won't do that if we have to manage our resources. So it's like, so what I would suggest is you mod your hex crawl, and every night we have to make a survival check. And if we beat the survival check, then that lets us know the likelihood of our rest getting interrupted, but that's it. And so if you want to add tension to the adventure, just be like, all right, everybody make a survival check. And everyone's 5, 4, 3, 2, 5. And it's like, excellent. So you guys going to do a long rest? Well, what are the chances? You don't know that. Well,
you think everything's fine.
Should we do it? Should we not do it? I don't know, man. I really need some of those spells. It's like, well, maybe you shouldn't have burned them all at once. But your call. And he was like, oh man, that might be the thing to do. I'm like, it would be my recommendation.
Yeah. The action economy, if you, by way of player, contrivance, or just the way the adventure campaign is set up, if the action economy is not creating any difficulties, then you essentially have unlimited actions, right?
Right.
Because every monster is all of your spells away from death. So you just fireballs, all my daily abilities that don't reset until sunrise, right? Because who cares? Like, I only have to use them this one time. It's like if you played a platformer where there was just no, or like a roguelike where there's no enemies but a boss fight. Like, you wouldn't be jumping around just burning mana like as you go through the level for funsies.
Yeah, or certainly you wouldn't be drinking potions or anything like that. Yeah, actually, a poor friend of mine, the very first adventure that he DM'd, I was playing a sorcerer that could cast Fireball once, right? Like, it was my brand new, once or twice, like 3rd level spell, right? Level 5. And he was like, all right, you guys go in the room, and there were a bunch of orcs all clustered together. I'm like, cool, I cast Firebolt. Not Fireball, Firebolt. And he's like, oh, okay, cantrip, all right. And now there's this other room, and there's some flammable stuff in the center. And I thought, Firebolt. All right, so you get to the end, and there's a huge fireball, and it just like wrecked his boss encounter. And he was like, I kept trying to get you to cast Fireball. I'm like, it's not my first game, man. Like, no, I know exactly what you're doing. You're like, ooh, look at all of these fireballable enemies. And I'm like, no.
Have you ever even been fireball boarding?
But, yeah, so, but that actually, the monkey's paw makes me think about a lot of affordances done through controllers, right? So...
Stretch. Anyway, we have a mailbag question. And I like this one because I'm probably not going to talk about this quite the same way as you, but I don't know. We'll see. Sometimes I surprise myself. The question is, other than control standards, what is the biggest distinction between console, PC, and mobile games? And just, I'm going to say that they meant to also include like VR games, right? Like,
sure.
Like goofy headset games, because they're still fairly niche, but they are firmly established within that niche. So I'm going to say they're different enough that I would count them. So do you want to take a first swing at this, or you want me to?
You go ahead, because I can probably piggyback on some of your ideas and seem smarter than I actually am.
Woohoo! That's placing a lot of confidence in me. Thank you. So I can't completely hand wave away the other than control standards, because that is like an unforgivable change to me, right? Anytime like Apple releases a new Apple TV, which is, a little thing, it's like a heavy duty Chromecast you connect to your TV, and they're like, it'll play iPad apps, which means all these great games, and you can play them using the little Apple TV remote. And I'm like, no, you can't. That thing has no buttons. It's not a controller. Get out of here. Come back with a controller. Even the Joy-Con has buttons. What's wrong with you? Come back when you have a controller, right? So for me, the control scheme is not just like an elitist, I'm a prick, like, oh, touch screens, but like, I also don't really play many keyboard and mouse games, because something about that hand position just kills the back of my left hand. Like the hand that is doing the WASD on the keyboard and like pressing spacebar to jump or whatever, like I can type all day. I do type all day, but something about like the static hand just pushing down like the fingertips to do movement just absolutely kills me. So I'm not even just like a physical controls are better than touch or motion controls. I want a controller. I want a controller that looks like a controller looking controller, not the stupid Nintendo 64 controller, not the original Xbox controller that was the size of like a dinner plate, not any stupid split controllers. I want a controller.
You want that's the thing. You don't want just a controller. You want a remote.
I want a remote controller. Right. So it's for me personally, it is really hard to not consider that, because my real problem with console/PC versus mobile is that mobile games are built entirely around hardware restrictions, and modern consoles just are big, powerful PCs. And modern PCs also now expect you to be able to plug in a controller for most kinds of games, right? There are some games that are very like keyboard and mouse heavy, but most games, even if they're never released on a console, if they're PC only, you can still plug in a controller and play the whole game with a controller. So modern console games and modern PC games are pretty much interchangeable, but they have basically unlimited resources, right? Whatever the best graphics are, whatever the best frame rate is, whatever the best sound is, you never think about stupid things like power, like, oh god, the battery might run out, right? Like all of those restrictions exist for a mobile phone game, which is why it's like a month ago now as of recording, Apple, who continues to try to pretend like they care about video games, showed a demonstration of the RE4 remake, right? Okay, so Resident Evil 4 remake, a brand ass new AAA game from like 2 years ago, running on an iPhone, and you can pair like an Xbox or a PlayStation controller with it and play it on your iPhone for probably like several minutes before the processor overheats and the phone shuts down, or the screen dims to the point where you can't see anything, or the battery dies. Like, mobile phones are made entirely for a kind of gaming experience that I just don't find that compelling, right? Match 3 games, digital versions of board games, like, so, chess, cards, Monopoly, that kind of thing. I just don't go to video games for that, really. And then on top of it, to have to play a kind of game I'm not actively seeking out with no controls, right? You're just mashing your meat hooks on stupid touchscreen buttons. Like, it's terrible to me. And I get why people enjoy it, but like it is almost tailor-made to not be for me. Like, we'll make a kind of game he doesn't like, and with controls he actively hates. So I mean, I've nothing, we crapped on mobile phone games for like 7 years now, and I have no problem with people who actually enjoy that stuff. That's fine. But for me personally, it is basically not video games. When someone's like, oh, I play video games on my phone, I'm like, no, you don't. I play video games with a controller on a screen with like a console powering it. Like, I'm sorry, you don't play video games.
You don't hate people who play mobile games. You just hate mobile games.
I hate that they are, for reasons that I agree with logically, categorically the same thing, right? The stereotype of a soccer mom sitting in her minivan with the window down playing Candy Crush for 90 minutes while her kid is at soccer. Like, she is playing video games. She is a gamer. She plays video games. It is a video game by all definitions, right? This is like when we were talking a few episodes back and you were like, but it is a JRPG. And I was like, no, but right, this is exactly like that. It's like, it is the thing. It absolutely is the thing. But for my whole life, that term only meant things I liked. And now it includes things I don't like. So this is entirely on me just being like, you changed my thing.
I used to be with it, but now what I'm with, it isn't it. And what is, it is new and strange to me. And it'll happen to you.
Yeah, this is literally exactly like that, because rock and roll goes back to like, the 1920s, right? Like, black musicians started rock and roll, and then it became popular when white musicians started doing it. But then, like, if you listen to rock and roll from the 1950s and rock and roll from the 1980s, like, Metallica and Little Richard are not the same thing by any stretch. And yet, if you walked into a record store, you could put both of those albums in the same place. That is how I feel about mobile phone games. It's like, to me, they're not even video games, but I get that technically they are.
This isn't steak. Why would you call it that on your menu?
Yeah. So now, my last little addendum to this is VR games walk a weird line where I actually really enjoy the screen part of it, like being fully immersed and like you can turn your head and look, so you have real peripheral vision and stuff. Like that's something you can't really do very well. Even with an ultra wide monitor, it's not the same as being able to like do small eye and head movements. So I really like that part of it. I don't typically love hand tracking. Like I still want a controller, even if it's hand tracking the controller, I still want to be able to like take actions with buttons. And the games that I have enjoyed the most in VR are those. It's the ones where moving my hand physically through space moves my hand in the game. But if I want to pull the trigger on a gun, pick something up, let something go, like that you do with a button, you don't just physically open and close your hand, because I want the tactile sensation of the controller to try to stand in for the tactile sensation of something being in my hand, so that my hand isn't just like weirdly clutched or weirdly slack. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's until they get maybe like a glove that would provide some kind of resistance. So you feel like, oh, I can't close my hand any farther because I'm holding something. But I want something tactile, and right. VR games, the screen is great. Like I would absolutely play traditional games with a VR headset on if I had the kind that worked that way, just to have a giant movie theater size screen in front of me. But the controls, it is exactly the same problem as mobile controls. I want buttons, I want thumbsticks, I want something to hold on to. I need my safety plastic.
No, that's fair. I think for me, there's three main differences. One, the main difference for me between mobile games and all other gaming is, and I think that you hit on the root cause of this, is the monetization. About 90% of mobile games, if I had to guess, are monetized by like micro purchases, and I think the reason behind that, you kind of hit on, is that they tend to be for shorter experiences. So they're targeting people who are like playing for 5 or 10 minutes, and I feel like if you're okay with burning 5 to 10 minutes of your time doing something that is low density fun, then you're probably okay with parting with $1 to $2 of your money at a time as well, So I feel like that there might be some synergy there. But yeah, that to me is that when I think mobile games, I think like if I'm going to play this mobile game and I'm going, let's say I'm going to really enjoy it, right? I am going to spend $30 on this mobile game. It's going to be over a period of a year to 2 years, but I am going to spend that money, So I think that that's kind of where that's at. I would say for the rest of it, especially consoles versus computer games, is one is mods. I know that mods are very popular with console games, and actually for Baldur's Gate 3, which is the main thing I've been doing with my life, is the modding community has already made that the game itself is amazing and dense and fantastic, and the modding community has already created like so much additional content for free, and it made me almost want to go back to computer gaming. I didn't. But it made me think about it, because they literally, I think they have like 8 maybe playable races in the base game. But, a mod adds the rest of them, like all of the rest of the races for 5th edition. And a friend of mine just sent me a picture of like, he's like, yeah, I'm thinking about playing a sorcerer, and it was a kobold. I'm like, did they release an update? And he's like, nah, mod for computer. I'm like, I don't like that you sent this to me, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you pointing that out, because a console game and a PC game have very little space between them in the modern era. If you are taking the cellophane off and playing it the way the designers intended, right? And yeah. On a console, you don't really have any choice to deviate from that. Not really. I mean, like there's, Game Shark and Game Genie. Like, yes, sort of you can deviate from it, but not really. But PC is a general purpose Turing complete computer, man. Like, it can run any kind of program we know how to write, because the only kinds of programs it knows how to run are the ones we know how to write, which means if you know how to write let me play as a kobold programs, then you can tell Baldur's Gate that's what we're doing now.
Yeah, and it goes, okay. And the other one, which is, my big one, is consoles, plug and play, man. Like if you want to play a video game and it's out for the PS5 and you have a PS5, you can play that video game. If Baldur's Gate 3 comes out and you've got a computer, who knows, like I feel that, and again, for people that do know, this seems trivial, but for me, I mean, it is a degree of stress that I just cannot manage because, if somebody said like, oh yeah, why don't you play this? I mean, I've got a brand relatively new, it's 2 years old or something like that, gaming laptop, right? That I said, I want to buy a laptop that will do all of these things. And you said, okay, how much are you willing to spend? I was like, this range. You said, this is the one. But again, like, I don't know, man. I could have bought like something for $500 that was a paperweight, or maybe I found a huge deal. I mean, I don't know, And so to me, even if somebody said, hey, do you want to play Baldur's Gate on your gaming laptop? What I would do is, instead of trying to figure it out, which would be a insurmountable amount of stress to me, what I would do is I would say, Lions, with the computer that I have, you tell me if this is going to work, because I will never, ever again purchase a game and bring it home and try to play it on my computer and then be $500 into the hole and then take it all back. It's 2 days of my life I'm never going to get back, and I still don't forgive computer games for that. It's been
Diablo 3.
Diablo 3, it's been 15 years, and never forgive, never forget.
So I really appreciate this framing, because as you were saying, I know for some people this isn't like a big concern. Like, yeah, that didn't even occur to me, because for me, it's not a concern, right? The same way, because of my chosen vocation and my hobbies, like the same way you are 100% confident if you slap a cartridge in your Super Nintendo that it is going to turn on and play the game. I can tell you, not only, I'm going to blow your mind to think maybe a little bit. So there's my gaming PC, there's my old gaming PC, there's my laptop, and then there's my Steam Deck. And I could, without thinking about it, tell you which one of those computers could run which of the games that I own, right? Like,
yeah.
If I was going to say like, oh, I'm going to sit down and play Final Fantasy 14 or Baldur's Gate 3 or something, I wouldn't go to my laptop or to the Steam Deck, because even though it could technically play them, it wouldn't be as good. I would go to the big, powerful gaming PC, because that's where like all of the horsepower is, right? And I think you're right that the stress level that comes along with that is not always worth it. Like you should be getting something more than just like, I play on a PC instead of a console, because most games are also released for consoles now. Except like, I'm talking regular publisher games. There's a whole universe of indie games that never make it to consoles, and that's unfortunate.
Yes.
But with one of the worst things about PC gaming actually has started to make its way to consoles, and I'll be curious to hear if Baldur's Gate 3 does this. Does Baldur's Gate 3 prompt you to do like performance mode or graphics mode?
No, or at least not that I remember.
Okay, so a lot of new like super AAA games, I think actually God of War Ragnarok might have done it. When you boot it up like the first time, the game on a console, it says, hey buddy, do you want to play this in performance mode, where we will guarantee you 60 frames a second, but it'll only be like 1080p for the resolution? Or do you want graphics mode, where we will shove all of the polygons and all of the particle effects in there, but like sometimes the frames per second might dip to the point where you will notice, right? Like
right.
Below 60, like the human eye can still really easily tell the difference between 60 and anything less than 60, because like it just feels a little bit less smooth. And on my various computing devices, the reason I would say, well, I'll play this game here but not there, is because of how the game would perform. Not that the game is even unplayable, but it's like, well, if I'm going to play it like on my big monitor and I want everything to look nice, I want to play on my gaming PC. I don't want to just plug my laptop into the gaming monitor. My laptop will play the game, but it won't look as nice. And like, there's no Super Nintendo that plays Super Mario World and makes it look any better than any other Super Nintendo, right? Like that is just what the game looks like. And now the fact that modern games, the first one I remember seeing this on for me was the Final Fantasy VII remake. Like you put the game up and like one of the very first things it asked you is like graphics or performance. And I was like, God damn it, I come to consoles so I don't have to deal with this.
Yeah, no, I think that, so agreed. And I think that part of it too is that, and this is just, again, bad taste in my mouth. What I hate is that when I like do a thing and then somebody comes to me and goes, well, of course that happened, moron, right? So like,
thanks for including me.
Yeah, right. So I mean, again, like I've had a number of experiences where it's just like I don't want to be playing a game and then all of a sudden it drops to like 2 frames a second, right? You know, or starts to freeze or crash or whatever. Because again, to me, I go to video games for the endorphin drip, right? Video games are here for me, like to a crippling point. We've discussed it on the show, right? You know, so like if I'm playing a video game and I am stopping to have the feeling of joy and starting to have the feeling of frustration and anger, I don't like that. Now I'll tolerate it to a degree, but if it's not even like the proposed game experience, it's just my ability to play it, and I go to somebody, I'm like, man, this game is frustrating me because I thought I was going to sit down and have fun, and instead it just crashed 4 times, and it's like, well, what's your processor? I'm like, dude, I don't know. It's this. And I'm like, oh, you poor little plebeian moron. Of course it didn't do that. You need to spend another $500. And I'm like, no, I didn't want to spend $500. I wanted to spend $80 on this game, and I wanted to play it, and I wanted to get $80 at least worth of joy out of it. I don't know if I'm going to get $500 worth of joy. Burn all this to the ground, you know? So, that is why I don't console game. I am not that literate.
You do console game.
Yeah, I do console game. Don't PC game. I lack that literacy in order to make that happen.
Yeah. And I will let you know, as we segue to our topics, I also get that feeling when I'm like, I know how all this works. Why isn't it working? Right? Like if I have done something with a PC game, and I'm talking like the core experience, right? Like download, install, plug in a controller, play the game, and like game crashes, the controller doesn't work, the frame rate's all screwed up, the resolution's all messed up, I can't make it do something. Like at least for me, like that feeling does not go away just because I'm like, oh, well, I have the skills to resolve this. I'm like, I have the skills that this shouldn't have been a problem in the first damn place.
Yeah. No, I can imagine it being a little bit more frustrating when you're like, I know how this is supposed to work. Like for me, it's like I try to read the arcane inscription, and I'm like, I mean, I don't know, man. I'm not proficient in Arcana. It's not my thing, right? But if you're a wizard and you fail your knowledge Arcana check, you're like, no, this is the thing I do.
All right. I want to know what we are playing. What are you playing, and why should I care?
Ooh, I'm going first. Sorry, I should have jumped on that better. I am playing Baldur's Gate.
List complete.
Yeah, end of list. No, man, I've been playing this game to a life-destroying amount.
Could you put hours on that? Do you happen to know?
I actually do. If you can fumfer for a quick second, I can look that up real fast. 107 hours.
That's a lot of damn hours, man.
That's a lot of hours. Oh, nope. Sorry. It just updated. 120 hours.
Jesus Christ. In the time you said that sentence, you played for 13 more hours.
You just need to put like a cut in between me saying those 2 things. Like 107 hours. Actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm Johnson. I got to go play some more. Just 120 hours.
I did notice you uncomfortably scratching at your neck the whole recording.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of hours. The nice thing, though, is that Megan and I are playing through it as well. So it's like, and because of the nature of the game, it's not like we're both playing Mario like side by side. So we're both, you know, like because it's a narrative game and there's a lot going on. Like we're talking to each other and we're discussing and having a grand old time. But yeah, no, it is. Not only is it a lot of fun because it is, but it's also like helped me a lot with D&D because it is almost a 1-for-1. And so like there are a lot of rules in D&D that I now have more easily encapsulated in my head because I've seen it, how it works in like attacks of opportunity. I'm way better at keeping track of attacks of opportunity now in D&D because I'm like, oh, okay, it's when they exit the space, they're allowed to enter, but when they exit, they get the attack of opportunity unless the person is using a ranged weapon, in which case then they don't get an attack of opportunity. But also when you're within 5 feet, ranged attacks are at disadvantage, so that's why you might eat that. And so I'm like, okay, this all makes sense. There have also been a number of, like, the thing that I have found so impressive about the game is how deep it is. I have not completed a single playthrough because I'm doing that with Megan, right? Like, we're going through the main playthrough. So whenever on one of my personal playthroughs, I start to catch up to where we're at, I just start a new game, new class, new whatever, because I'm like, oh, well, how does this class work, right? Especially because Megan was out of town for a little bit, so I was able to like forge ahead with my main one. So I say all that to say that every single time I have played, something different has happened, where I was just like, oh, I didn't know that was there. And a lot of times without making a deliberate choice, just with like happening to stumble into a different area or happening to do something in a different order. One of the ones that happened recently is you go down into like this Druid's Grove and, they're all like, the refugees need to go away. And normally I'm like, I side with the refugees, or maybe you're right, or something like that. But this time I said, I attack them, and because that's an option. It's just that you can just straight up attack.
Yeah.
And so then it starts combat, and the game does something really weird, which is it starts combat and there's a bunch of druids, right? It starts combat with like 3 of them, and all of the other druids just like run by you as you're in turn-based mode. They're just like running past you, and I'm like, huh. So I'm like taking my time and doing all this stuff until all of a sudden I hear blood-curdling screams and the sound of steel on bone behind me, and I'm like, oh, they're all fighting behind me too. I gotta wrap this up and go help. And so I finished beating my guys, and I'm like running back, and there's just like a pool of like 3 bears and like 5 tieflings that were fighting each other, and they're all dead. And I'm like, oh no. And so I keep running, and then I get to like where the battle's happening, and the poor refugees it's like it shows everybody on the thing. And so there's a leader of the druids, and she attacks one of them, and then I get one of my people goes, and then the refugees go, and they all run up to him and swarm her, and I'm like, yeah, you take her down, man. And hits for 1 damage because they're unarmed, because they're refugees.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just turned to Megan at that point. What?
You monster.
Oh no, I'm with the refugees. The druids are the people killing them.
Right, but you sent the unarmed, unequipped, unskilled refugees who were malnourished and scared to fight magical monsters.
So I did not know that I thought I was just fighting the druids. When I fought the druids, they then used that as the excuse to go murder refugees, right? Just
the collateral damage.
Yeah,
for your
pretty much,
bloodlust.
right? And so I was like, and so I just turned to Megan and I said, like, I don't know, man. If you've ever got 2 long swords and you're fighting a bunch of unarmed people, you should take a step back and be like, am I the bad guy?
Stay back, refugees.
So eventually I do take care of all of the druids, and I'm like, okay, all right, good. All of the druids are now taken care of. That went sideways a little bit. But the upside is, they got a bunch of cool stuff. So I took their cool stuff, and I had a bunch of stuff to sell. And so I went to the guy to sell, and oh man, he got by the druids. And so I couldn't even offload all of my junk, so I was like, this has a bunch of tack on effects I wasn't prepared for. But I'm playing it through because I'm like, you know what? Sometimes things go sideways. The one other one that happened that I was like really, really impressed with, which is there's an area that you go to where it's pretty difficult for your level, So there's 3 basically bosses that you have to fight. And there's a number of different ways to attack them. Like one of them, you can say like, hey, I'm with you, man. Like, let's talk in private. And she goes like, okay, let's go talk in private. And then you go talk to her, and she goes, all right, so we're gonna do this ritual. And you're like, no, I'm here to kill you. And then you can separate her out and kill her by yourself. But if you don't kill her in 1 round, she calls for help, So pulled her aside, but then there's the 2 left, and they're pretty tough, right? So on my way there, I just noticed, I'm like, there's a little grate over here. Huh. I go in there, and there's 2 giant spiders in there. And I was like, oh,
were these the ones you liberated?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I told you about that one. Yeah.
You did. But I love the whole concept of just like, they are designed to not be challenges for the player. They kind of exist in the world, right?
Yeah.
And so the back of the book, Reader's Digest summary is, you freed the spiders who then went and exacted their own vengeance, right?
Yes.
And that, I think, is like, that's the nugget of something you could have had that encounter more than once, where you go in there and you're like, spiders, and you kill the spiders,
Yeah.
right? But then you have the like, I freed the spiders and the spiders made me their king playthrough, right? Where they now are out fighting for your glory.
Or you freed the spiders and they died exacting their vengeance,
Right.
Like there's so much stuff going on there. And it's it's awesome. Like one of the people, Minthara, and so there's 2 things you can do with her, because she's a drow, right? And one of them, one is you go up to her and you're like, hey, I'm gonna kill you, right? And so she says like, hey, you're with me, right? Like we're on the same team. And one of the dialogue options is like, same team, I'm here to kill you. And then that just starts combat immediately.
Right.
But if you talk with her, you can actually ally with her if you just agree to go kill all of the refugees, you know? And I was just like, and one of them, I was like, I'm going to do an evil playthrough, man. I'm doing it. And she was like, want to go kill refugees? I was like, no. I don't know, man. I can't do it. I'm like,
be
no, I'm gonna
wielding long swords going after refugees.
I don't have it in me to go back there and do that. So I'm like, no, I'm still here to kill you. Because every time I go to play an evil playthrough, I just end up playing a jerk playthrough where I'm like meaner to people.
Yeah.
But I don't do like truly evil stuff,
yeah.
you know? So
yeah, you end up being like, oh, it's the badass with a heart of gold.
But yeah, so no, there's again, just tons of different ways to play it. Loving the hell out of it. Absolutely worth the money. Great story, great reveals. Oh, and the one last thing I'll share about it is I was playing D&D with a group, and we did the whole story, completed the campaign, which a lot of times is difficult to do. And the main bad guys were Illithids, and the main bad guys in this one is Illithids, right? And so one of the friends of mine that played through that adventure, this was hugely aggrandizing, and now me retelling it is now self-aggrandizing. He said, I've been playing through it, and I thought to myself, either this studio owes George money, or George works at the studio and somehow is like not told anybody this whole time. But there are a lot of parallels to the story that you told and the story that they're telling. I'm like, first of all, thank you, because that's a big AAA studio, and you just compared my D&D adventure to their story. But I was like, what it tells me, though, is that means I told an Illithid story correctly, because we're both working with the same source material. So if you've got like an Illithid and this bad guy and this bad guy, and they're all working together, it's like, yeah, because that's the mythology. So that was pretty happy. But none of that matters, because what matters is, what are you playing, and why should I care?
So this is our first full month where we had a break from doing a review. Yep. And you were fine. You just played Baldur's Gate. So like you probably didn't even notice, because you just did what you were going to be doing anyway. I actually noticed a little bit. I was kind of like, oh man, how did I go from, I barely feel like I have enough time to give this game, the time it deserves, to give it a fair shake. And now, even though I've been really busy with some projects at work, I was just like, what should I play? What do I want to do? Right? Because I had to put any thought in it, right? I went from zero thought to any thought. And so that led to kind of a weird smattering over the last few weeks since we recorded. So I did play a little bit of Oaken, finally.
Yeah? What are your thoughts?
I don't have any yet. Like, because I played...
Let's get better than bad.
Yeah, I played for maybe total an hour over like two 30-minute sittings. One of them was on a plane, so it had like half my attention on a plane. But the thing about it that stood out to me immediately was, because I thought for sure, I was like, the card mechanic, like I often don't like that kind of deck building mechanic, like when it's shoehorned into another kind of game. So I was worried about that. But like you said, the music was amazing, but I couldn't hear it because I was on a damn airplane. So I was like, I'm gonna have to wait and see how that sounds. And I played when I was back at my house. It is amazing. So you were right on that front. The artwork is really beautiful. Like the little world they seem to be building seems interesting, with all these like nature sprites and spirits and stuff. But the thing that immediately stood out to me was, before I started playing Oaken, I was like, I'm going to play Advance Wars, because it's like a strategy game that's like actual military style. It's super popular. It's so like beloved. They actually remade it for the Switch. So I played through the whole tutorial and like got in, because it's long. The tutorial in Advance Wars is huge. And then you get into the real campaign, where you're kind of off the chain a little bit more, and you have to make more decisions and you have less help. And the thing that has continued to plague me playing that game is, unlike the strategy games that I have played, like Final Fantasy Tactics, not Octopath Traveler, Triangle Strategy, you can't move and act or act then move. You have to either move then act or just act. And Oaken also does that. If you act in Oaken, you cannot move afterwards. And I don't actually know how this breaks down. Like, do most strategy games let you do either in either order? Do most strategy games not? I don't know. But because my template for strategy games is basically just Final Fantasy Tactics, I just think you should be able to move and then act or act and then move. Like, that is just how I like observe the battlefield. And there have been a lot of times in Advance Wars where I was like, haha, I'm going to shoot this guy and then retreat. No, I'm not. That character is now screwed because my whole strategy was based on not being in front of the bombs when the bombs went off, right? And so, like, you just, I mean, you know, it's a thing you learn, like the rules of the game, literally and figuratively. Like, you learn how to use your pieces, but when I saw that in like the first or second little like tutorial match in Oaken, I was just like, crap. Okay. I just really have to remember that, like, you have to think as of movement as a thing you do first or a thing you don't do at all. Like, it is not one of your tools. It is like a tool that has a specific like time you're allowed to use it. And I just, playing Final Fantasy Tactics literally dozens of times over the course of my life, I just don't think that way. I think like I have it like in D&D, right? Like, you have a movement and you have a action, and you can movement then action, you can action then movement. In the older D&D, you could partial movement action and then movement again, right? Because your movement was like a total number that you burned down. So I don't know. Like, I don't think that's going to be enough to turn me off from the game, but it did immediately like make me bristle because I don't like it. It feels constricting.
I will say that the nice thing about Oaken, and I can't speak to the other game, whatever it was you just said.
Advance Wars.
Yeah, I pulled it up. I've got a picture of it. It's beautiful. But I will say that the nice thing about Oaken is that just press and hold circle, and it undoes the last thing that you did, which is
that's valuable.
Yeah, because I use that a lot, especially towards the beginning when, you know, I would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this and this. Oh, that's right, I can't do that. Or when I do, one of the ones I really struggled with was ranged attacks, because with melee attacks, I can get, like, it makes more sense to me. But with ranged attacks, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to shoot. Oh, and that's the other thing is with ranged attacks, if you move, you can't ranged attack, you know?
Funny. So in Advance Wars, there are certain units that can only fire, they can't move then fire, and there's like a little icon in the unit's like info card to tell you that. And I did not know that icon was there, so I was just trying to memorize which units were like that, and I made some catastrophic strategic decisions, and there is no undo. So I would be like, I'm gonna move this thing over here and then fire, and then and then you're just stuck because there's no way to back up.
Yeah, no, and that's yeah. So that's the way it is with Baldur's Gate 3. Is that once you do a thing, you have done that thing. Especially once you've selected, if you select a spell, like it won't let you it will let you back out of it. But like if you select, like, I'm going to use my bonus action to dash, it's like then you have now used that bonus action forever. You're like, well, come on, man. Like I didn't. Or worse is that if you use your, for like rogues, they can use a bonus action to dash, but everybody can use an action to dash, right?
Right.
And the action is green and the bonus action is orange. But if you screw that up, you have burned your action on dashing, and now you're screwed. Yeah. So the fact that with Oaken, where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to move here and range attack this guy. No, I'm not going to do that. Hang on, circle. Okay, I'm going to range attack over here, and then I'm going to dash. And no, wait, hang on, circle. You know, so that's at least a nice affordance for it. You know.
Yeah, and I do think with a strategy game, as long as pretending to take the movement doesn't give you anything, right? It's just like, no, wait, like my finger was still on the piece, right? Like in chess, like, nope, wait. And Advance Wars actually, so if you move, the little menu pops up that's like wait or attack. So if you are paying close attention and you're not like, you know, button happy, you could move, see that you are unable to attack, and then cancel your move. Except if you're on a map that has the fog of war, you are not allowed to cancel moves, because then you would move.
That relieves.
It would relieve the fog of war. You would see if there was enemies, and then you could undo your move and take an action with foreknowledge that you didn't earn. And the game flat out tells you that. Like, if
Nice.
you move and you expose the fog of war, you cannot cancel that move. And I was like, that's one, thoughtful, and two, I'm really glad they explicitly pointed that out, because otherwise it would just be like, whoa, wait, why couldn't I? Right. And you might be able to back into it, but that would be frustrating. Another thing that I kind of want to keep playing Oaken just for this, literally this one distinction. I've never played a strategy game that was played on a hex.
Right? That's kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. I think that, and so I'm not educated enough to like distill all of this immediately, but I would definitely probably say that when building a strategy game, there is like, it might come out during playtesting, it might come out in the beginning, but there is probably like if you can move after you attack, there is a series of things that you cannot now, abilities you can't have, because like, because there's no reason to have them, or, you can't have them because if they are in there, that is now the only thing to do. It is the optimal play, So there's probably something like that. One of the things is slightly tangential, but like in D&D, the displacement, Cloak of Displacement is a rare item, and it is very overpowered, right? And so I banned it from all of my tables. Like, I'm like, this does not exist in my universe. And so all of my players have gotten used to it, right? And so I was playing in another person's adventure, and I jokingly said, like, I'm assuming that Cloaks of Displacement are banned. And he goes, no, man, you can have one. I'm not going to ban it like you. And I was like, understood. I said, I'm like, this is a bad idea. I'm not going to stop you. You're the DM, and you're letting me have a thing that I want, but this is a bad idea. And then he's like, no, man, you could go for it. And into the first session, he's like, this was a bad idea. I'm like, I told you. For any number of reasons.
First encounter, first session, I have made a mistake.
I've screwed up. But the thing that will tie this back is that I'm sitting next to a friend of mine who has played at my tables, and it is banned. So he's just used to it not existing. And I was like, oh yeah, I have a Cloak of Displacement. And he goes like, well, how does that work in 5e? And I described it to him. He goes, well, I know what I'm going for the next time you give me a rare item. I'm like, that's the problem with it. All other rare magical items are obsolete. If you are given the choice of getting a rare magical item, it will always be this. This will be the first thing that everyone picks. And then there's all other rare magical items, right? So I say that to say that feels kind of like why they would take that ability away from you, because it's like, if you can do that, then there is now, we took the 10 different ways to play this game, and now there's one way to play this game. And so that's kind of the save the players from themselves kind of a thing.
Yeah. Well, and you can see where a lot of things that, if they worked every time, would be the obvious optimal strategy. So Cloak of Displacement, right? You get like ridiculous movement, right? And movement in D&D is expensive, so anything that gives you movement for cheap or free is super powerful. In Final Fantasy Tactics, because it's a grid-based strategy game, movement is really important, and some of the most powerful things you can do are things that let you move even just one square further. Because if you're a melee character, that might be the difference between reaching your target and hitting them or not, right? And if they're ranged, movement really matters for you. You need to have a greater movement from them. Late in the game, you can unlock the teleport ability, which literally just lets you go to any standable square on the map. Even if it's not a square that you could normally traverse to, you can go there if it is a square you can stand on, but it just fails randomly.
Yeah,
so it's like, yeah, go for it. You can try it. But if it doesn't work, then you are stuck where you were. And so now you can't use it as an all-purpose get-out-of-jail-free card.
Well, and the worst thing about the Cloak of Displacement is that it actually doesn't impact your movement. In 5th edition, all attacks are rolled against you at disadvantage all the time.
Oh, the Cloak of Displacement it's like Mirage. Where,
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, I was confusing it with was it like Misty Step or something?
Yeah, Misty Step or Boots of Striding or something like that. But no, and the thing that bothers me about that is it's always on. It's all the time, right? And I actually found out a tack-on effect of why it's a crappy item is that what happened was that the DM said like, all right, the guy rolls to attack you, and he attacks 3 times, hits you once. And I said, he's rolling at disadvantage, right? He goes, oh no, sorry, he's not. And I missed. all right, next round. Yeah, next round comes around. All right, he hits you twice. He's rolling at disadvantage, right? No, I forgot. And I'm like, that interaction sucks. It sucks for him. It sucks for me. Nobody's having fun, you know? So I was like, there's a weird side social reason to not have this thing in the game, because I could see him starting to get irritated by the fact that he couldn't hit me. And I'm like, this is why this was a bad idea. Like, are you having fun? I'm not even having that much fun. Like, let's stop this.
Well, and it's like forced rules lawyering, because if you don't say every single time he's rolling at disadvantage, right, then the item is worthless.
Right. And actually, honestly, what I did after about like 4 or 5 rounds of combat, not non-consecutive, right? But towards the end, like, I had taken no damage, had tons of hit points. And he's like, he hits you. I'm like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna take the damage. Like, what are we doing with our lives here, man? We're all just here to have fun.
You just get like a little like a table placard is out in front of you that just says he rolls at disadvantage, right? And so like when they turn to look at you to be like, George, what's your armor class? There's just a sign out there that already says it.
Yeah, no, actually, what I should do is get like a little thing I can hang over like my computer camera that just like when it's his turn, I just hang that over there that just says he rolls at disadvantage. And actually, one of my other favorite spells in 5e is Shield, which is used as a reaction, and it adds 5 to your armor class, because I have started using the catchphrase, because I had that spell, is so somebody'd say, what's your armor class? I'm like, 15 until you hit me. Then it goes up.
And then suddenly...
yeah. Sorry, so more games that you played.
No, I did play a few other games, because we will just continue to talk about D&D stuff as my way of not yet purchasing Baldur's Gate. I'm gonna... But not
you
yet.
Got it, man.
I'm gonna. I'll get
do
there.
it.
So I also was having a conversation.
We can play
actually,
Baldur's Gate online together. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting and talking more about Baldur's
yeah, no,
Gate.
you are. But that's true. That is a thing we could do. And probably will do. I was talking with one of our listeners in the Discord, and we were talking about Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4, and he said Mega Man 3 was his favorite, and someone had crapped all over it on a podcast, and he was like, oh, that sucks, you know, because like, it doesn't change his opinion, but obviously, like, it's just not fun when someone's like, the thing you like is not good. And so I started talking about Mega Man 4, because I was like, I think Mega Man 4 is the one I played the most as a kid, because that's the one where you have the full big buster shot that you can charge up, and you could still do the slide, right? And it's the first one where you could do that. What I forgot is it's not the first one with the charge shot. Mega Man 3 is. Mega Man 4 is the first one with the double charge shot. So I sat down and I was like, I haven't played either of those games in a long time. So like, I'm going to plug them in and like give it a try. And I sat down and I started playing Mega Man 3, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, this thing and this guy's over here and Proto Man, and it gets introduced and you could do the charge shot, but it's only the small one. And then I played for like 1 or 2 Robot Masters, and then I plugged in Mega Man 4, and I was like, oh yeah, see, this is the opening music I was thinking of, like this, the graphics and visuals. Okay. And then I got a little bit into it, and I was like, oh no, Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4 are just one game in my mind. Like they are just similar enough that like, oh, these Robot Masters are actually from this one, and those Robot Masters are actually from that one. And I'm sure as a lad I had the very clear delineation, but like they have just those layers of sediment have just been pressed into one diamond in my mind, right? Because like Mega Man 1, I'll never forget, because that's where you don't have anything and it's only 6 Robot Masters, right? And then it goes up to 8, and Mega Man 2 has Quickman, and like he's the worst, and his whole stage is terrible, right? So like,
oh, God, it's awful.
Yeah, there's these super distinctive things about 1 and 2. But then 3 and 4, they'd kind of gotten the formula down, and they hadn't run out of like Robot Masters yet. So they're not stupid. Like some of the later ones are kind of ridiculous. And so they're all like still kind of in this same vein as like, you know what I'm talking about. There's some really dumb ones.
No, I do. I just think that like we should do like a riff session, or maybe in the after show, where we just try to come up with the dumbest Robot Masters. Like, does his taxes, man? You know, like.
I could think of some pretty horrible ones that I would put into the after show and not the main show. But yeah,
anyway, sorry.
I think 3 and 4 are there's probably like, oh, well, this end boss sucks and this end boss is fun, and that's why I prefer this one over that one, or this level's good, but that one's kind of sucky. But like, there's a lot more overlap there than there is before then and after then, right? Like those are the kind of the most formulaic from my, very thorough research.
Yeah, I would probably say that like 3 and 4 is when, which is weird because it's just that's just what your mind kind of grabs onto. And I don't know whether it's, that's came out when we got into it. And so we baseline there if it's unique to us or kind of more global. But I would say that like, that's probably to your point when you had all of what you would consider base abilities, So, and you know what it is that's when you got all the stuff that persisted throughout the series, right? Then 5 and 6 added gimmicks. Each of those had new stuff, but that's the only game that had that stuff. So it's easier for you to remember, like, okay, that's like 6 is the one where Rush can become your armor and stuff, like that's that one. So that kind of like crystallizes in your mind. But it's like 3 and 4, it's like, yeah, that's when you just had all your stuff,
Yeah, you can move, you can jump and shoot. Yeah. Yeah. And I like that solidified in my memory as like a positive thing, whereas sometimes you're like, oh, that was the one that was like the turning point, right? And I'm not trying to start a big crappy conversation, but like to me, that's Ocarina of Time, right? Like for people who remember Ocarina of Time fondly, it's like, oh, that was the pinnacle of the formula, and for me, it's like that was the start of the formula. Like that wasn't when that wasn't right before it went off the rails. That was right as it was going off the rails, right? Like it's
right,
and those are both accurate representations of the same moment in time, because it's like I'm looking at the car where I can see the two wheels that are in the air, and so I'm like, oh God, we're all gonna die. And other people are looking at the other side of the car and they're like, no, those two wheels are firmly planted on the ground. And I'm like, right, but there's 4 wheels.
I would probably say that I love your analogy, but is that Ocarina of Time is actually when it went on the rails.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. The end of it all, gamers play what we play, not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? People know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure already in sight, you're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is safe. So you're more along for the ride.